So we started that virtual machine. I'm going to copy this public IP address. Going to RDP into it. So I'll just put on the public IP address and then so I use this my user ID and password while setting up that virtual machine. So I log into it. So after I log into it, so what I do is open up a Windows Explorer at the bottom. You see this icon, and then you will have something like this, right? Like this PC, and you'll see C drive, D drive. In this PC, right click, and then properties. So after you see properties, you see the computer name. I set it up as server 02. You see the work group. So this is work group, meaning it's in its own separate private network, right? So it's like your laptop, sitting in your own network. So what we will do is we will join to the domain that we set up earlier. So meaning, so we created a corp DC, right? Like we went through the slide before. Like you set up a company, just to recap, right? So you set up a company like Wells Fargo, you set up a domain like something like smolartech.com, and then inside it, like you set up multiple OU, all this structure. So this is the domain controller where all the objects and everything is stored. So that's corp DC one. Corp meaning corporate, and domain controller, right? DC stands for domain controller. So I set up that machine already, I think last week. So I will make sure if it's already started. Okay, it looks like it's already started. It's not. Start that machine as well. So I think what we will do is, so it is going to start. So I'm going to join this machine, server 02, to the domain that we set up. I think since we are doing this lab environment, I thought we set up like lab.local or something, right? So I will just do change settings. So this computer description, we don't have to do anything here, but you click on change, and then I will keep the same name, server 02, but instead of work group, we will select domain, and then provide the, in this case, during my initial setup, I chose lab.local. But if your company is like, Wells Fargo, something like that, wellsfargo.com or something, corp.corp, the way how you want to set it up. That is a domain that where all your computers and servers will be joining, right? I'm going to click on OK. So I think that server might be still coming up. Is not ready. Okay. Reload. Forgot the password, user ID and password I gave. Uh, since it's been a while, I don't think maybe. Let me see if I have it somewhere. No. All right, so it sounds like my password is not working. We're doing man, how to spend some time again. I think spinning up again, joining into the domain might take some time. So I think basically what we will do is I think I will show it in the next class. But for now, I'll just clicking on change this option from work group to domain, and then you provide the domain name, and then you click OK. And then what happens is this machine will be joined to that domain, and then it will ask you to reboot the machine. So after the reboot, this machine is part of the domain, and you can actually see this machine inside the Active Directory console, that okay, this machine is part of that domain, and you can manage all the policies and everything within the Active Directory. You can enforce those policies at the organizational unit level or at the parent Active Directory, like lab.local at that root level. So that way, your all the computers, servers, everything in your organization can be managed effectively, efficiently, with the proper policy management, with all the security policies and everything like that. So basically that's in a nutshell, like what Active Directory is and how all these computers and objects, like servers, everything is managed within a company. So for similarly for users, they have to change their password every 90 days. So that is enforced policy. So after 90 days, your password will be expired. The reason they do is, it's because of security. So that is managed through the group policy editor. So that is high level about the Active Directory. And then I want to show you the disk management today, thing which is part of our disk partitions. What are all the different volumes and the licensing and I think for local user. And then maybe firewall, I will show the firewall and DNS DHCP briefly. So okay, coming to the disk partitions, right? So this is one of the Windows server 02, right? Which I created, with the bare server 02. It's a Windows Server 2016. I just created, with I did not change any modification. So meaning I used the same image and from the Azure Marketplace, and I created it, right? So if I go to my computer, I see only C drive. If you click on C drive and right click properties, you'll see the file system is formatted as NTFS. So every file system, file system is nothing but like you add a drive. So for example, your computer has a hard drive on your computer. So if you directly insert, when you build a computer, you insert a disk into your computer, it won't be the computer, in terms of the Windows operating system, it won't be able to recognize the disk automatically. So what you do is you have to format the drive. When I say format the drive, it has to be configured in such a way that the operating system can understand the disk, and so you can the operating system can see, oh, this is and after you format the drive, you will see something like this. So, oh, this is a disk C drive, D drive. This is because of human, making it easy for humans. So they after you format it, because most of the times people don't know underneath the details, right? Like you just see open computer, you see C drive, D drive, and you use it to copy photos, files, everything, and you store it in here. But what happens underneath this, like you physically, you add a disk to your computer. It's the same thing in the server world. Server is nothing but like a powerful computer. You add some solid state drives or something onto the physical server, And so what happened was, those drives have to be formatted. In this case, Windows typically they do format using NTFS file system. It could be some of them operating system Linux, and they could be formatted like in their own native file system, right? So whatever the operating system, it could be the various file systems are like NTFS, FAT32. There are various file systems out there, but since we are learning about Windows, especially Windows Server, let's just focus on how the Windows world is going to be looking at, and when you actually operating, understanding the disks, right? So that's how, I mean, I just want to show the NTFS file system. And quota is like to limit how much you can actually enabling quota management. You can actually set a specific limit disk space to, I can actually set it, even though it's 126 GB. Maybe I want to put a limit. Okay, I don't want to go beyond 100 GB. Then in that case, I can limit the disk space to 100. And if I do 100 GB, then you won't be able to put anything beyond 100 GB, right? You cannot use beyond 100 GB, because in the back end, I actually limit the disk space to a certain limit. Because that way, that's called quota. Quota, you have, it's like a reservation quota, right? I reserved the disk space to only limiting it to only 100 GB out of 126 GB. So quota meaning, just to understand, quota is like you set a space limit, what you really wanted to limit to, so you cannot go beyond that. That is the quota. And so I think the hardware, in the hardware, I think this is a little bit in depth, like understanding what bus number 0, target ID 0, LUN 0. So meaning this is like even going internal to the storage, like inside the motherboard you have multiple, how it is being accessed and all that stuff. So this is rarely you will get to come across, but understanding this is a little bit sometimes troubleshooting things gets easier. So yeah, I think for now security is like limiting who can access these C drive. I mean, this is right now you can see server 02, that's what we built the server, right? And all the server 02 administrators and users can actually who has all these permissions. So administrators has full privileges, full control, read, write. They can read the files, they can write it to that and everything. Users has read and list folder contents and read, but they cannot write to it. So like this, I mean, when you think of organization, you can actually, after this machine is joined to the domain, you can actually, maybe Windows admins can have full privileges, but maybe, for example, if you think of maybe Salesforce developers, right? They can only read the contents, but they might not want to do anything besides that. So you can do all these things, right? So you can limit who can really write to these C drive, D drive. I'm just showing C drive, but in general, it's a D drive, or other data drives, and nobody is going to mess around with the Windows C drive. Because that's where our operating system is installed. So in general, you try to stay away from any modifying or making any changes to your C drive, right? And then that's in a nutshell, like go into the properties and just seeing a few options here. This is obviously, you all know, like user space and what's free space, right? Out of 126 GB, that's much is being used. Okay. So now what I do is typically one of the interview questions people ask is like, in Windows administration, like after you, how do you increase the space of a drive? So like what right now I have a requirement internally. Somebody asked, maybe SQL developer, they came and asked, hey Rajesh, maybe I need I need more space to can you add another drive? Can you add another drive to store my SQL database logs? So then in that case, what I do is I I don't want to let them know that maybe create another folder and store the logs in C drive. No, I don't want to do that, because even them, they want to manage it separately, right? So this is a temporary storage. Even this comes by default for Azure, so don't even think about it. So then in that case, you have to go to your Azure virtual machine. And okay, so you need another separate drive, right? So, okay, how do I achieve that? I go to disks. And so this is kind of both Azure and Windows administration. So, so you get to learn what both of them. So you go to disks and then you create and attach a new disk. So I need to add a new disk, meaning new drive, meaning, in the human terms, when I say drive, in the backend, it's nothing but some data disk you have to add. So this is the first one. I am adding it. Maybe I'll just say disk name SQL logs. Doesn't like this space. I can do SQL logs. That is also fine. Premium SSD is for production workloads. Now what we are doing is lab, right? So I just go with the cheapest option here. Okay. And maybe, they say, okay, maybe give me the 50 GB. And then I can change whatever the size I want. I think after you select this, you don't have the ability to change the other options. So you just, managing the encryption key, leave the defaults with the Azure managing. Azure can manage those. So I think that's it. And then after you add a new disk, so if they say like, hey, you need 2 drives, one for SQL logs and another for something for storing, database itself, then maybe database backups. Then in that case, I will add another drive. So I'll just, quickly, maybe we can delete it after. Maybe this one is a 90 GB. Let us say I'm going to change this premium SSD to 90 GB, right? Okay. All right. I click on save. I'll say DB backups, maybe for storing the database backups. Click on save. As you can see, I created one for 50 GB and one for 90 GB. So we can understand which one we are talking about. So it takes few seconds. So while it's attaching those disks to the virtual machine that has been already up there. So now I log into I go to the virtual machine. After I add the disk, do you think the drives will show up automatically? No, the answer is no. They won't be able to show up automatically. So what you have to do is you go to right-click computer, this PC, and then manage. Okay, I think it goes here. So what you can do is, this is a server manager. Every Windows server has something like this, like a data center, and then you have the briefcase icon. So this is a server manager. Once you log in here, you go to the, it's automatically there, right? So you open it up and then you click on tools. You have lots of options here. The one that we are interested right now is there a disk management now? So go to computer management. Okay, I click on computer management. I got something like this. And then I go to the one I am interested is disk management, right? Because we are trying to add the disks. So since we added 2 disks, one is 50 GB and one is 90 GB. So it is showing that, okay, you have 2 disks, looks like attached, to this virtual machine. Do you want to initialize those disks? And so they can access it. Yes, obviously, we wanted to. So here, as you can see, the partition, and the disk partition, how do you want to partition? MBR is like, still people use it, but GPT is the next generation partition table. So you can either, some people, back in those days, if you have Windows Server 2003, 2008, you need to format with MBR. In the latest servers, usually we format with GPT. So I'm fine. I can format with GPT. That's fine. because GPT can have more, you can add the disk more than 2 TB. It has like latest and greatest features. So anyway, so you just, but it's good to understand what are the two different partitions in Windows. Always like MBR and GPT. Those are the two partition types. So I added those disks, as you can notice. So disk 0, disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, right? These two are already there before, as you can see all the blue color icons, so it's already there. The ones that we added, two drives, one is 90 GB and one is 50 GB. So what happened to the small minor? We lost some little bit point, less than 1% of the space. It's because of the way how it has to be do the partition. So you will lose some small minor percentage. But I think you'll just look at it, okay, it's 90 GB. This is the one that's closest to it. So you click on this disk to, not here. So you click on this one, then you, as you can see, if you can convert to MBR disk, you can do a lot of other options. But so this is unallocated. You click on right click on this block, and then you click on new simple volume. So now we are actually formatting it, right? So we are actually formatting and making it a drive, because right now, as you can see, if I go to the Windows Explorer, I don't see anything other than the C drive and D drive, which is temporary. So now I'm formatting this 90 GB drive. As you can see, the total max disk space 92,000. This is in I think kilobytes, 92 GB. No, in megabytes, in MB. So every 1 GB, I think you may need to understand the math. Like 1 GB equals to 1024, like 1,000. You can see. It's very slow here. I'll just write a quick notes here. So 1 GB equals to 1024. 1 MB equals to 10 kilobytes. Obviously 1 KB, kilo meaning like 1,000, right? So, but in computer world, it's not 1,000, 1024 bytes. So in general, we talk about GB. Even when you buy a hard disk outside, it's like half terabyte. So obviously another one is 1 TB. Now, as the data is growing, everything we are going upwards. 1024 GB. Even you can go further, 1 terabyte. Go to 1024 GB. This is good to understand because the lowest is like 1 KB. When you create a notepad, as you can see, it's in kilobytes, and the data, everything, it goes like the further. And nowadays, when you have enterprise storage, they have like in terabytes of data, 40 terabytes, 100 terabytes. They start talking in petabytes and terabytes when you're dealing with the company storage. But anyway, so I just want to quickly, because you might be confused looking at these numbers. What is this? This is nothing but when you have 90 GB, 90 times 1024 equals to, if you do the calculator math, 1024 times 90 is 92,030. Right? So what drive you wanted to configure? If the user say, hey, I want maybe N drive, you can select N drive and then select blah, blah, blah. You can select one of these file systems, right? But in general, 99% Windows people format using NTFS. We don't even, I never seen any company doing the other file system as provisioning. Most of the time it's NTFS file system, and you can allocate by default, people choose default option. This is like how much unit size, meaning the page file size. So don't even worry about it, just keep the default option. Volume label, so in my case, I'm 90 GB. I used it for DB. People, when they request, right, they put it in the ticket, right? Hey, I need 90 GB for database backups. And so this is for backups, so 90 GB. So based upon the request, okay, I need this 90 GB, formatting as NTFS. And since this name will appear in the Windows Explorer, as you can see, Windows C drive. So this is the label we are actually giving it. So I'm giving DB backups, right? And perform a kick format, that's fine. Let's take quickly. So it's formatting it right now and then making it, trying to format with NTFS file system and making it available for you. Since since you are now done and it's all good, you go back to the Windows Explorer, boom, you see the DB backups N drive. So you configured it as an N drive, DB, the label, you gave the label as a DB backup. So now you told the database guy that, hey, your drive is all set. You can start dumping your backups. So you can store all your backups in that drive. So they can work on it. So as an administrator, as a systems administrator, your responsibility is to make sure you provide the storage, you provide it, configure it in such a way, because they don't know how to do all these things, right? So it's your job to go into it. You add a disk and you come inside and you format it and you actually provision the disk. And basically the end users, the database guys or developers, they just see like this, oh, okay, I have the drive now. So they start using it. They don't need to know all the underlying things. But anyway, so we'll just quickly format this guy as well. So I select on this block and then simple volume. Next. Now I save it for DB logs. I chose it for DB logs, right? So now this is also done. Format is still formatting, I think. So now I have DB logs. So I can store logs in this folder. This is like, same. And you can obviously, change these things. Like, you can change the drives and all the, using the map network drive, right? So there is another Windows feature in the computer. You click on map network drive, you can actually, you have another one, like your company has a network share, you can actually map it. Maybe P drive, and then your company, and they might tell you a path, right? They give you a server name. Maybe in the domain controller, they have a path that you can just provide it here, and then you can click on finish, and then you can map the network drives internal to your company. So that is something that you can, sometimes you may have to use this map network drive option as well sometimes during your work. That is another option. Okay. So in nutshell, I think that's about the, you can, usually most of the times people have to, okay, they started consuming all the data, then you have to increase the disk space. Again, you click here, disk name, you can select the disk, you can configuration, properties. I think you can increase the space. You can even delete it if you don't need it. I think you have to power it off. So power off the VM, and then you have to start doing those things. Okay, but yeah, I think it's just good to know about the disks and how do you expand the disk expansions. Okay. So I think that's on the disk partitions. I wasn't sure if I missed anything here. Disk types of partitions, types of volumes. Okay. Licensing, right? So in general, okay, license. Any questions on the disk management before we move on? So in general, most of the interviews are people when in the working environment, they might ask you, hey, how do you create a disk, or how do you expand the disk? So you have to tell them, you have to go to the disk management. So this is a keyword, buzz keyword that you need to remember. You can tell them that, hey, launch the server manager, and then you go to tools, and you can open computer management, and then you go to the disk management, and then you can actually format the disk. But before you doing that, what do you need to do? So you have to actually add a disk in the Azure portal. So when I say in the Azure, but if it is a physical server, you actually, they might already have disks, or they physically add new disks. But nowadays, everything is cloud and more virtual, right? So all you do is you add the disk space, and then after you add it, so you go to the computer management, and you go to disk management, and you expand the drives. All right, so that's on the disk. Since we are already here, I'll just quickly, briefly talk about the logging, Windows logging concept. I think may have user profiles and This is a home drive mapping, so I already covered. So how do you map the drives? Like going to the mapping the network drive. How do you do that and all that stuff? Okay. We would map network drives. So this is the area. How do you map all those drives? So drive mapping, right? Configuring drives, folder security. I think folder security we talked about. So for example, you have DB logs inside that, maybe not DB logs. Okay, that's fine. You have database backups and you have some backups created, or maybe you create a folder. Maybe you say like admin backups, and you store all the files inside these admin backups. Maybe some of them that you want to have control and nobody else can see it, only the database admins can see them. So in that case, you go to the properties, security. So when the security tab is very critical to understand, because anywhere within the Windows server, you right click on it and properties and go to security. So this is where you can actually click on edit, and you can actually tell who can actually see these folders, who can actually write the data to the folder, who can actually read them. So in general, by default, administrators, they get the birthright, meaning they automatically get those permissions by default because of the way how the server administrators have been configured. And then basically, if there is some group, right? Like for example, when we talked about in the first day, like maybe business analytics people, right? Developers, or maybe we kind of name it like business analytics, BA dev. Maybe we create a group, add so few people like Mark, John, and they are all business analytics developers. So we add all those users into the groups, local users and groups. So we create a new group, and we call it BA admins. Say business analytics status. So now you created a new group. There is it. So you have to refresh sometimes. Refresh. Okay, I have a new group created here. Usually you add the users. Now I don't have any users, so I can add, but I think the first thing we have to do is we create a few dummy users. In general, imagine like you have J-Doe, maybe his name is John Doe. Password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Select user must change. So if I select this, they can, when they log in, they can actually change the password. Password does not meet the complexity. Okay. What's the complex password? And I create another one. Say Mark. Create. Okay. All right. For now, I just created 2 people, right? John Doe and Mark Roberts. And then his user ID is Jado and Mark Roberts. So I go to the groups. Imagine like there are 10 people in that domain, or for now I go to this group. So this is how in general in company people segregate the users and groups, and they kind of manage in a systematic, organized way, so they can literally control who can access what. It's like kind of giving the permissions, only required permissions to the people who needs to do their job. I don't want to give more privileges to the BA, business analytics admins, to to do some things on the marketing servers. So right, so I only want to give these business analytics servers that we created. to manage them, and maybe they can do whatever they want to do within those particular servers. So so that's why other groups won't be complaining, or hey, why other people are logging in and doing things on their environment, right? So you want to control that aspect. So that's why users and groups comes into the play. So you have, imagine like you have thousands of users in the company, you add them into the groups that they belong to. You kind of create them like, .NET developers, one group, maybe Java developers, SQL admins, SQL DBAs, application developers. So based upon what their job role and title, we create groups, and then we add them into those particular groups, and only give the permissions that they need to perform in their job, right? So now I have John Doe. Now usually either type in their last name and then check names. No, nothing. Wait a second. JDoe. Okay, so JDoe. So this is a local user. It says server02/JDoe. But if it is part of a domain, you can actually see those users in the domain actually. But right now I'm just because of the domain controller issues, I'm just telling you within the local to the server. So I added that user, and I'm going to add another user from within the server. So the user ID, meaning M Roberts. Okay, got it. So I added those two users into this particular group, and okay. Now my BA admins group has those two users. So imagine like you have 12 developers, so that they need to be part of this, right? I add all of those users into this particular group. Okay. So this is users and groups, so you can manage the way how you want it to, and put them into the right bucket. So now if I go back to the shared folder, like how do you, I think the topic that we wanted to discuss is local users and groups, and then also folder security, right? Folder security, and how do you set these permissions? Any folder, right? I'm just picking an example like on the drive that we just created, but it applies, the same concept applies to everywhere, any folder in the Windows Server operating system. So what you do is you go to the right click properties and then security tab, and then you click edit here, and then now I want to along with this comes by default, right? You didn't add anything, but now I want to give rights to these guys, BA admins. So automatically it picked up server02/BA admin. So now what kind of rights I wanted to give them? Do I need to give them full control, modify, only read and execute list folder contents? So by default, it picked up some of the default options, right? Like reading the folder contents, read and execute, but not writing. But if you want to have them full control, they can do whatever they want. They can give full control. That means it will check all the boxes. You can basically modify, write, read, everything. So that means you can add new files to that folder. You can edit it. You can do everything. So since these are BA admins, maybe I designed it for them, so I give full control. Or if you want to only limit them to only list folder contents, meaning that they can only see the folder contents, and besides that they don't want to do anything else, then I will just click on list folder contents and apply. Okay. So basically BA admin can only like once they go into this particular folder, they can see the contents, but they cannot add anything into it, or they cannot edit it, they cannot write anything. So that's folder security. So that applies to anywhere else. So even if you go to C drive, go to Windows Azure, and you can basically you can click on properties. Maybe you don't want them to see this Windows Azure folder, or maybe only see the but not edit or do anything inside it. That's how you set up those security and file permissions to restrict and have the more control. Okay. So we learned about disk management, file control, file access, and then the logs, right? So people log into these servers. How do you track them? Maybe somebody I have these users inside this Windows server. Maybe from part of the domain. So you have like hundreds of users, but people might log in and maybe delete some stuff. Maybe somebody deleted all the backups, maybe admin backups folder. How do you track who is going to delete them, and how do you know, how do you track and kind of make them responsible? Why did you delete it? If you don't have the tracking, you cannot. So similar to, you think of, you have security cameras inside your home, maybe you can actually find out who actually walked into the house looking at the tape, and find out who is responsible for that, right? So similarly, you have everything that you actually log into this Windows server, you do anything, everything is tracked inside it. So that is called logging. Logging is one of the important thing. Even if you are a developer, if you're an administrator, it is very important to understand about the logging, because logging is the way you can trace what happened in the past, right? So now I logged into this Windows server. Like, you can go to the event viewer. So this is another question that people in general ask in the interviews. How do you see the logs? Maybe some people even don't ask that, right? Some people ask, you have a Windows server that is not functioning correctly. Suddenly it was working very good over the last over the last week, but today, this morning, starting at 9 a.m., it started having issues. It started very slow. It's very annoying for the end user, so people started complaining. What do you do as an administrator? You don't want to say that, I don't know, maybe build a new server. You don't move them everything to the new server. That's not the right answer. So first thing we have to do understand is, okay, people started having issues from this morning 9 o'clock, and they never had issues from until yesterday, right? Until this morning 9 o'clock. So you go to the, okay, so the problem has been stated, and how do you understand how to resolve that problem, right? Then the logs comes into play. Okay, so then that meaning, same thing as, like, if you take analogy as a security cameras, right? You say, like, everything is good, but after 9 o'clock we started having some noise inside the house, or blah blah blah. Then what do? You go into the security camera and look at the tape, go after the 9 o'clock, see what happened. Maybe somebody got into the house, or something, it's a malfunction, maybe it's nothing else. So you try to find out, going to that particular time and start analyzing the data from that particular time, right? So when users complained, maybe it's not 9 o'clock, maybe it's 11 o'clock. It never had issues until 11 o'clock, but maybe they started at least seeing the problem at 9 o'clock. So usually, in general, when somebody complains at 9 o'clock, you start looking at logs, maybe 1 hour before that, right? Let's start, maybe because there might be events that actually caused the issue at 9 o'clock, who knows? So you started looking at events a little bit time prior to the user complained date timestamp. So you go to 8 o'clock and then start looking at the logs. So in the Windows server, people, if they have to, as an administrator, if you have to see the logs, you go to computer management. Same thing, for disk management, like computer management event viewer. So this is another terminology that you have to remember inside the Windows server, right? Event viewer. Under the event viewer, you have the Windows logs, and inside the Windows log. So yeah, if you are talking in interviews and you have to tell them that, hey, you have to go to the event viewer and start looking at security logs. If it is related to something security, somebody hacked into your environment, and you need to understand what's happening. So go to the security logs and start analyzing the data. Okay, at 1:13 a.m. I mean, it's my time is not configured to EST time zone, but so you go back. The concept is, like, you go back to the timestamp when the user complained about it. Oh, okay. So it's at 12:35. Okay, then you go to that particular timestamp and see who actually logged in. You can start analyzing the data, right? So you start looking at it will capture every single event, whoever logging into this computer, right? It just basically, analyze all these events that that Windows server will capture every single entry inside it. So that's how, I mean, even you can tell, oh, okay, so who shut down the server, who powered it off. You can even see, okay, somebody, it has been shut down at this particular time, and then what happens next. User initiated log off, the system time was changed. So you can literally go to each one and then move your up arrow key and then try to understand what's happening. So this is security log. So there are separate, the buckets that they have been segregated. If you are somebody's application, like, you installed Google Chrome and it crashed all the applications. So maybe some user might complain that, hey, suddenly my SQL application is not functioning correctly, or maybe they used to access some web portal, website that they log in every day and they do the job, right? But suddenly that portal is not having, is started having some issues. Then you might see something, okay, it's application related, or maybe somebody installed the Java or some .NET framework. Something is installed on this machine that's causing the, you can go to the same timestamp. Oh, okay, you started having issues at the time. Okay, you try to see something error related. Oh, something license activation has been failed, or whatever the issue related. You can try to read these details and try to understand what it is. I know initially this does not make any sense, but as an initial starting point, you have to understand where the logs are all captured. And if it is application installation related, application functioning related, you look at the application logs, right? Don't worry about it. I can't understand what this is all like. But at least, try to go to this location in future and then see if anything troubleshooting related, this is the area you have to keep focusing on, right? Setup related, if you are installing brand new application, maybe this is the area. Usually system related, 90% of the time we look at the system type of events, because this is where all the fun stuff happens. So more likely we try to look at any error related. Okay, so what is the event, what's happening, why is it error? Error meaning like it is trying to do something but it could not do it. So either the component that raises this event, or just read this stuff. And sometimes you can grab this and Google is your friend in any job, right? Go to Chrome and Google it. If you don't know something, just capture the event, the error, and then Google it, right? And then you can find some details. People talk about it in the forums, or some people write the blogs, and then you can even read it. You can understand, just read through it, and then you can, oh, this is why happening. And maybe somebody suggests, oh, this is how you troubleshoot it. Maybe do something, remove that thing, remove the USB drive. Maybe that's how you are getting it. Anyway, so that's how you troubleshoot it. I'm just telling you, don't panic because of the errors. Even I don't know some lot of things, so you just try to see where these errors and some at the time related. Oh, it's not able to do the Windows update. It's related to the source Windows update client. So Windows could not patch the system updates, antivirus related. So usually anything that's information is more information related. Error is the where you can more focus, try to understand what's happening. Okay. But anyway, I think in a nutshell, you just have to understand where those logs are stored and what kind of different logs, application, security, setup, system logs. You can tell them that, hey, I go to these events and try to do some analysis and find out some, what's happening. And then maybe I advise them to, hey, maybe that after installing the Chrome, you started having issues. So uninstall it and try to use Internet Explorer. Then you won't have any issues at all. So that's how you advise, and basically looking at the logs, you can get some idea about it. Okay. That's on the logging. I know it's not captured in the in this guide, but it's an important topic in the interviews, and also more likely when you are actually working on the Windows servers as well. Okay. Any questions so far? I think one more class we should be done with the Windows administration basics, and we can move on to the, maybe in the next class I'll just tell you guys DNS, Zone, and DHCP related firewall. I'll cover these 3 topics and we should be good. Focus these things for the next class. In the meantime, think of anything that you guys want to ask. Just